The ride was 11 minutes long. You know this because your phone was in your hand when you got in, and the timestamp on the last message you sent before you lost signal reads 11:47, and the timestamp on the first message that delivered after is 11:58, 11 minutes, the length of a short commute, the length of a song you'd skip halfway through, the length of a conversation you'd forget by dinner. You have not forgotten a single second of it. What you are still trying to understand 8 days later is whether what happened in those 11 minutes was something done to you or something you walked into, whether the person behind the wheel knew exactly what they were doing or whether they were as lost as you were by the end of it, whether you were chosen or whether you were just there. Start from the beginning, not the beginning of the ride, the beginning of the hour before it. You are in a city you know moderately well, not your city but not a foreign one either. You've been here 3 times before, always for work, always staying in the same area, always moving between the same 4 or 5 locations with the comfortable tunnel vision of someone who is not really seeing a place, just passing through it. You know the coffee shop near the hotel. You know the side entrance of the office building that saves 4 minutes. You know which subway exit puts you on the right side of the street. You do not know the neighborhood you end up in. That part was not planned. The meeting ran long enough that the train you intended to catch became the train you missed, which became a calculation about whether to wait 20 minutes on a platform or find another way back. You chose another way. You walked out of the station and stood on a street that was familiar in the generic way of streets that have a pharmacy and a convenience store and a bus stop with a map you don't have time to read properly, and you opened your phone to check ride options. Your phone was at 9%. This is the first thing that matters. Remember this. The app loaded slowly, found your location slowly, showed you drivers in the area with the sluggish reluctance of an app that knows your battery won't survive the transaction. You started the booking. The phone died at the confirmation screen. You were standing on a street you didn't know well, in a city that wasn't yours, with a dead phone and a meeting on the other side of town that you were already late for. And then a car slowed down next to you. The window came down. A man, somewhere between 45 and 60, the kind of age that is hard to pin because some people wear it loosely. He looked at you the way people look at you when they have already assessed the situation and arrived at a conclusion. Not aggressive, not overly friendly, just certain. He said he was going toward the center. He said, if you were heading that way, he could drop you. You said yes. Later you will go over this moment many times. The going over is not about guilt. It is about trying to locate the mechanism. The thing that made you say yes to a stranger's car on a street you didn't know with a dead phone and no way to tell anyone where you were going or who you were going with. You will identify several contributing factors. The dead phone, the time pressure, the way he asked, which was offhand, the way you asked someone if they want the last of something you were going to throw away anyway, the absence of anything overtly wrong, the presence of something that your instinct registered and your rational mind overruled because your rational mind was running calculations about trains and meetings and battery percentage. You got in. The car was clean. Not aggressively clean, not the sanitized blankness of someone hiding something, just the ordinary tidiness of a person who keeps their space without thinking about it. There was a jacket on the back seat folded in a way that suggested habit, a water bottle in the cup holder that was almost empty, a small air freshener hanging from the mirror, pine, faint, the kind that has been there long enough to have lost most of its purpose. He pulled into traffic without asking for an address. This is the second thing that matters. He did not ask where you were going. You noticed it and you filed it under. He said he was going to the center and I'm going to the center so he doesn't need to know specifically. Which was reasonable. Which was the kind of reasoning that feels solid until you look at it from a different angle and it looks like something else entirely. You talked. That was the unexpected part. You expected the silence of a transaction, the particular quiet of 2 people sharing a space, because it is practical, and not because they have anything to say to each other. Instead, he talked. Not a lot. Not the relentless performance of a person who needs you to like them. Just enough. He asked what brought you to this part of the city. You told him about the meeting. He asked what you did. You gave the short version. He nodded like the short version was sufficient and he had suspected as much. He told you he used to work in the same industry. You asked which company. He named one, a real one, a company you knew well enough to have an opinion about and not well enough to interrogate him on. He spoke about it the way people speak about places they have genuinely been, with the specific texture of someone describing a memory rather than constructing a story. The name of a manager he didn't get along with. A restructure that happened in a year he named that matched what you knew of the company's history. A project that went wrong in the particular way projects go wrong when the timeline is optimistic and the budget is not. It was convincing. It was convincing in a way that you will later understand is different from being true. About 6 minutes in, he turned onto a road you didn't recognize. You looked at the street. You looked at the direction. You had a rough sense of where the center was relative to where you'd started. The approximate orientation of someone who has walked a city 3 times and retained a partial map. This road was not moving toward the center. This road was moving laterally, or possibly away, in the specific way that sometimes happens in cities where the direct route is not available, and you go sideways to go forward. You said, "Is this the way you normally go?" He said, "Construction on the main road. This is faster." You said, "Okay, because there is construction everywhere in every city always." And this was the most plausible sentence that could have been said in that moment. And you wanted it to be true, so you let it be true. Minute 7, minute 8. The neighborhood outside the window was quieter than where you'd started, not empty, not the cinematic quiet of something ominous. Just residential in a way the previous streets weren't, less commercial, more insular, the streets of people who live somewhere rather than pass through it. You watched it go by and you thought about your phone and you thought about the meeting and you thought about how you would explain the delay and you thought about all of these things, instead of thinking about the thing that was sitting at the edge of your attention making a small persistent noise. You were choosing not to hear. He said, "You seem like someone who thinks too much." You looked at him. He was watching the road, profile, the particular stillness of someone who has said the thing they wanted to say and is now waiting to see what it produces. You said, "What makes you say that?" He said. "The way you looked at the street back there. You were calculating." You said, "Just trying to figure out where we are." He said, "Most people don't bother. They just trust the driver." He said, "But for nature say that aborti apatia." He said, "That's not a criticism." But it was something. You felt it land as something, not a threat, not a warning, a statement that contained more than its surface and was delivered with the precision of someone who had chosen it carefully. "Most people don't bother. They just trust the driver," said by the driver. In the car you got into because you trusted him. On a road you didn't recognize because you didn't bother to calculate until minute 7. Minute 9, he turned again. This turn moved you back toward the direction you had originally expected to be going. You could see the density of the center ahead, the skyline compression that cities produce when you approach their middle. The road made sense now. The lateral movement made sense now. The construction explanation made sense now. Everything made sense. And yet the sentence sat in the car with you for the remaining 2 minutes and did not stop sitting there when you got out. He pulled over. You were 2 blocks from where you needed to be. He pointed in the direction of your building. He said he was going a different way from here. You thanked him. He nodded with the same certainty he'd had when he first asked if you were heading to the center, like he had known all along where this was going. You got out. You found a charger at the front desk of the building. Your phone came back to life and you went to your meeting and you were 7 minutes late and nobody noticed because meetings are like that and the world continued in the ordinary way. The world continues. But 8 days later you were still thinking about the jacket on the back seat because on the way out of the car you glanced back. Habit, making sure you had everything, and the jacket that had been folded on the back seat when you got in was no longer folded. It was shifted, moved, in the position of something that had been reached for and replaced at speed. The specific disorder of an object that has been disturbed by a hand that was in a hurry. You had not seen him reach for anything. You had been watching the road, watching the streets, calculating. In minute 8, minute 9, minute 10, you had been looking forward. You don't know what was in the jacket. You don't know if it matters. You got where you were going. Nothing was taken. Nothing happened. The meeting was fine. The train home was fine. The 8 days since have been fine in every material sense. But you keep returning to the sentence. Most people don't bother. They just trust the driver. Said with the precision of a person who has thought about it. Said to someone who had just started looking out the window and noticing the street. Said like a test. Whether the 11 minutes were something that happened and meant nothing, or something that happened and meant exactly what it felt like it meant in that car on that road in minute 8. You don't know. What you know is this. 9% battery on a dead street made you get into a car without thinking clearly. And inside that car, a stranger told you that most people don't think clearly, and he was right. That's the part that won't leave. Not what he might have done. What you almost didn't notice.